So the Justice Department's been in court today in Washington defending those deportation flights. In fact, the hearing just wrapped up a short time ago, but the standoff continues between the department and Judge Boasberg. In fact, if anything, it's been ramping up here the last couple of days. The judge today criticized the department's actions so far, calling them, quote, disrespectful, saying they have not been cooperating. But what he did not do is make a ruling or give us any indication of when he will make a ruling. Let's bring in Brian Claypool on this, a criminal defense attorney with us live. So what's your take? Because I've been wondering, you know, they took these people that they allege are gang members, they sent them to El Salvador, they're already there, flights are there. We still don't have a ruling on whether, you know, Trump and company ignored the judge or not, but what's going to happen with this? Say they did rule against him, then what would happen?
Yeah, hey, Connell, great to be with you. Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. I mean, even if this judge comes back, let's say early next week, and says, okay, Trump administration, you were wrong. You violated the constitutional rights of these alleged gang members that were deported. What's he going to do? Issue an order sending them back to the United States for a hearing before the immigration board?
Yeah.
Well, if you do that, you're going to need the cooperation of the, is it the El Salvadorian government? I believe
they're in El Salvador, yeah. Venezuelan gang members, for the most part, are alleged, but they're in El Salvador.
Right, and then they're not likely to cooperate because, as I understand it, the Trump administration already sent them some money to house these alleged gang members for a year. So it ends up not really being able to be enforced, Connell.
Yeah, okay. So that was the one question about whether they should have listened and turned the flights around legally. The other question, and the reason I use the term alleged, is because that was brought up as well. It's like, how do we know? You know, they got a tattoo. Is it really? They move very fast. Are these people really who the Department of Justice and the Trump administration says they are? So that's come up. President earlier says, oh, they were vetted, and yes, they're all gang members. And then the ACLU lawyer at this hearing just said this. Watch.
What we're going to see are many, many people being falsely accused of being a member of this gang. And what that means is they could end up in a Salvadoran prison for a year, 2 years of their whole life. And I think for those of you who have seen the video of how the men were treated when they got off the plane and the human rights reports about Salvadoran prisons generally, they're going to be in real trouble.
What would you say about that, Brian? They got the wrong people here.
Yeah, Colin, that's a major issue. I mean, I do civil rights law. As much as I don't want gang members on the street, I represent a mom, you know, Tammy Nobles, whose daughter Kayla was murdered by a MS-13 gang member, but he was documented. He was a known gang member. If you've got some people that are being imprisoned who, for example, somebody I heard was maybe a soccer player.
Yes.
And you've got to filter that out before you send people over to another country to have them imprisoned. So I think if we have a teachable moment here, I mean, maybe the Trump administration needs to slow down a little bit, make sure that you have the proper individuals you believe pose a risk of harm to society, and then have them shipped off and not infiltrate this group with people that don't have any criminal record.
I mean, I think that's fair, but I said it earlier, I think that they know that as well. And to me, they're most likely doing this on purpose. And maybe part of it is just to send a political message. In other words, hey, look what happened to these people. Look how fast we're going to move. If you even think you should be in this group, you better self-deport, or you better not even come into the country. I think that's a lot of what's going on here. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that, or a good comment. And I think another thing that the Trump administration could have relied on up front, which might have saved face here, Connell, was the state secrets privilege, right? That deals with, look, we can't tell you about a lot of these people that were deported because it might have compromised national security, right? Instead, they invoked this Alien Recovery Act that had really nothing to do with deporting them. We're not involved in a war. And I think another thing I wanted to mention here, Connell, is the Trump administration needs to be careful in terms of publicly denouncing federal judges. Why? Because this judge that you're talking about that is ruling on this issue was actually appointed by the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Roberts in 2017 to head up the FISA court. Remember that court that makes determinations?
Right, he worked on FISA, yeah. He's got an interesting background. I mean, he first came a judge as a Bush appointee, and then Obama put him in his current position, and then, as you said, Justice Roberts to to FISA. So, yeah, he's got an interesting background.
Yeah, he does. And I think the moral of the story here, though, is you've got to be careful. You can't have your administration saying that judges need to be impeached because now you potentially have offended the U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts. Because think about it, Connell. He appointed this judge because he felt like this judge was capable of handling the FISA court.
Right.
And now you're denouncing this judge that he hired. So I think everybody here needs to take a deep breath and try to roll out these changes in a more thoughtful way.
Yeah, slow down a little. All right, Brian, as always, thank you. Brian Claypool with us.